Hi, my name is Weather. Oh, Brianna, over to you.
Oh, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brianna Gilchrist, and we are so excited to welcome you to the Black Minds Matter
Yes.
podcast.
Thank you for having me. How y'all doing?
We're doing
We're
good. We have a
doing
couple of
good.
visitors today, right?
Yes.
We have Walter. You want to take a second to introduce yourself?
Yes, Walter Blanks Jr., AFC National Press Secretary, and super excited. I mean, this is a superstar panel right here. Really excited about this and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and Senator Terrell McKinney from Nebraska, State Senator in Nebraska. And I'm so happy to have you on. I actually got a chance to meet you in person for the first time, and we're going to dive in deep and talk about there was a demonstration in Nebraska, in Omaha, right across from the city capitol, to protest kid prison, child jail, or however we were phrasing it in the media, a juvenile correctional facility that was being erected and costing the city millions of dollars to erect this kid jail. And you were there, and this was before you got elected. You were running for office, and so congratulations on your appointment, and also on some bills that you've been able to get passed in 3 months. Have you been elected yet? For how long have you been?
It's been since January.
Yeah.
Yep.
So congrats.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, we met at the protest against the youth prison that they're going to build here in Omaha. I'm in Lincoln right now at the state capitol, but yeah, it's a thing that keeps going, but it's definitely something I always fight.
Yeah. So can you tell the audience a little bit about the issue and then a lot of the other issues that are near and dear to you and why you were there that day?
So the county, Douglas County, which is where Omaha is located in the city, had proposed to build a new youth justice center, which is really just a youth prison in Omaha. And the reason I'm against it is because it doesn't address the root issues of why young individuals end up in youth prison, especially in Omaha, when in reality, about 70 to 80% of the kids that will be in this facility are going to be Black or brown, more than likely. And that's what I have a problem with. Instead of addressing the root issues and devoting millions of dollars to solve poverty, increase better access to education and food and things like that, the solution is, oh, let's just go build this facility because hopefully the system will fix itself. And me, just as a young Black man in America, if I'm waiting for the system to try to fix itself, I'm going to be waiting for a long time. So that's why I'm against it.
Yeah.
What made me
you muted?
Oh, sorry. But I'm looking at this thing. So what made me run? Honestly, I was working as a community organizer for a few years, doing a lot of community work and getting involved in doing things. And it kind of got to a point where I was fed up of just trying to get, local officials and other supposed leaders in the community to do right. And the previous senator before me, Senator Ernie Chambers, who had served in this office for about 46 years, was term limited. And I told myself I could sit out and let somebody run, or I could run and maybe I'll get elected. I wasn't sure. It's my first time running for a political office. But what I didn't want was somebody that didn't have the community's best interest at heart in this seat. And I felt like I was qualified to do it. And, it was a fun journey as well. I definitely enjoyed it. I came in second in the primary, and in the general, I won by a lot, which was great as well. And I'm here today.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I will
Yeah.
say thank you for running because it's not that regular people just wake up in the morning and decide, I can do that. And I want to do that. You know,
Yeah.
I don't wake up in the morning and say I'm going to run for office. So it's definitely a skill and a strength that is bestowed upon certain people. And it's good to have people, A, who want to do it, B, who are qualified to do it, and have a true heart for our people in these places, because that is how we change the system, right? Like, you can't expect the system, to your point, fix itself, because that's another loaded question, because that's implying that it's broken, right? Or is it working exactly the way it's supposed to work? But you can't wait for anybody to fix anything. And so, first of all, thank you for stepping up and putting your money where your mouth is to really do the work day in and day out for our community. We appreciate that. So, should we dive into these questions?
Yeah, and Walter, you know, this during this season we're talking about, you know, school to prison pipeline and the stories of people who are involved in that, and how, like, maybe if we fix things on the first end, that school part, like, we won't have the end, and we won't have this prison pipeline. It's just, you know, segue. And so, Walter, your story is pretty impactful, and I'm glad to have you on to talk about how that school part, that, you know, prevention piece was corrected in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, of course. Well, first off, everyone on here, thanks for being here, Senator McKinney. I'm a huge fan. I spend quite a bit of time in Nebraska.
Yes, we do.
Causing all kinds of trouble, good trouble. And so I've been following some of your bills from a distance. And so just continue the work, continue speaking up for you know, the communities that we come from. One thing that I've learned in Nebraska is that our kind of communities definitely need people speaking up for them. So thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Justin Wayne also is a huge supporter of the movement and pushing this narrative along. So thank you. But yeah, when I look back on my story and my experiences, people often ask me, you know, where would you have been, right, if it wasn't for your education journey or your way out, or, you know, all of these different things. And I often say that I'd either be in jail somewhere or 6 feet under. And sometimes people have called me out on that. They're like, "Oh, well, you don't. How can you say that? Like, you're not, like, there's no way of knowing if that's how you would have ended up, or you know, things like that." And I say, yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, you're true. But then I looked at my peers around that time. That's exactly the exact path that they were on or are on right now. You know, when I come home, there is still some people that I know who are still locked up or aren't with us at all, you know, anymore. And so it's really heartbreaking. And when you're able to make the connection between school to prison pipeline, right, it becomes a real issue. And so for me, I mean, my education, my family, you know, that was my way out. Like, I was the exception, right? I wasn't a statistic. I wasn't just another Black kid in the hood, right? I was able to be pulled out of that through my own education. And so, just like in Nebraska, right? Like, what is our focus here, right? What are we trying to accomplish? And I mean, I've heard you, Senator McKinney, many times talking about, you know, the youth prison is not the way to go. I mean, it just isn't. But unless you've had that experience or you're willing to listen, right? People just don't understand where we're coming from when we're talking about these various issues. And so, I mean, it's crazy when I think about some of the kids that live, like, right next door to me, down the street, right? We go out and play kickball or basketball or, you know, football and all these things. And then I come home back to Ohio for a little bit, try to catch up and link up with people, and they say, "Oh yeah, so and so's been in jail for 12 years now." You know, something crazy, and something, in my opinion, that could have been avoided, right? Some of these situations that people get themselves into could easily be avoided. My parents made it a huge priority to always keep me busy, right? I was in a sport. I was playing an instrument. I was in a play. I was, you know, doing all these different things. My mom would say all the time, "Yeah, that was just to keep you keep you off the street, right? Keep you from interacting and picking up habits from people who I don't want you to turn into. And now I'm super thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a video clip I'm gonna try to share. And yeah, we definitely try to keep up with all the great stuff that happens around. Is it? I can't play it. But it basically was you, Senator McKinney, on the floor talking about your experience in the criminal justice system. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
My experience with the criminal justice system honestly started probably once I came out the womb. My father was in the streets. My family was in the streets. So I seen a lot coming up as a kid. I visited my father in prison here and at the state penitentiary. And ever since then, there's always been some type of interaction with the criminal justice system or law enforcement throughout my life. And then, as growing up as a kid, I really would get lucky and avoid contact in certain situations. It was times where I had to run from the police or things like that, but I never was arrested as a youth. But then once I became an adult, I graduated high school, was in college. It was a situation where I was downtown in Omaha, and me, my brother, and some friends were leaving this festival that they have every year in Omaha called the Taste of Omaha, and we're kind of walking through the city park, and it's like 1,000 people out here, and everybody's walking through the park, and then a cop on a bike would just start following us. So we step on the grass to let him get past us, but instead of going past, he hops off his bike. He started asking for our names, and it just escalated to my brother and him having some words, and my brother getting arrested, then me trying to defend my brother. And then they send us home, but we're in downtown Omaha where our car is on the other side of downtown, and they send us the opposite direction. So I try to get on the side of my friends and avoid the police, but still try to get home. And instead of just letting me walk past, I'm not looking at them. I got my head to the ground, just walking like, please don't say nothing to me. I just want to leave. I just feel somebody just snatch me. And in natural reaction, I jerk back like, what is going on here? Then I found myself pinned up against a cop car, and they trying to arrest me. And I'm like, what did I do? I'm trying to walk home, like, get off me. And it was maybe had a cop on my legs, another cop on my forearm, another cop trying to hop across the car. And I'm just fighting them off like, why are y'all arresting me? I didn't do nothing. So eventually this lasted for a while. And then I was just like, okay, everybody looking, and kind of similar to, I wouldn't put myself in a George Floyd situation or anything like that, but similar where people are just looking and watching them just do this to me. And eventually I was like, all right, I'm gonna surrender. As soon as I surrender, they just start, kneeing my head into the ground, scraping my head against the ground. And I went to the county jail and served, I think, a day in jail. Then I got bonded out by my grandfather. Then a couple months later, I went to court. And this is the crazy part about this. I go to court and they're like, okay, we're gonna drop the resisting arrest thing, and we're just gonna give you this park citation. And I'm like, okay, I agree, right? I'll take the park citation if you guys drop the resisting arrest. Why wouldn't I not agree to this? But I'm also super ignorant to the law. It's my first time ever arrested, but I agreed to it. And then fast forward a few years later, I applied for a job. They run a background check and they say I was convicted of resisting arrest. But I promise you, I'm
gonna let you finish your story. I got lots to say.
Yeah, so that happened. So got denied the job because of that. And then there was another situation where I was downtown again with my sister, and again trying to walk to my car. and a fight breaks out. We're leaving a bar downtown, and it's a cop. He's pushing the crowd, and he ends up pushing me. And I'm like, "Can you please keep your hands off me? You don't need to touch me to do your job. Just keep your hands off me." And he just kept pressing, and we had some words. And I turn around and walk away. And again, he smacks the cuffs on me, and I go to jail for disorderly conduct. But there was other situations where I was just getting pulled over a lot for something wrong with the license plates, insurance, your headlight, this, and that, or situations where I'm walking with my friends in North Omaha and they would just hop out the car and search us and run our names or stop the car, pull us out, say we're looking for guns, don't find guns, and say y'all can leave and just pull off. So it's been all types of situations, and that's why I'm for reform and transparency and accountability, because, pretty much my whole life, I've seen them oppress me and others around me as well.
Wow. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. So, I grew up in a low income family, low income city. And so you have this kind of idea where you think that, you've had hood experiences, or you've, I'm from Newark. I've experienced some things, but, the one thing I will say that I have never, I've been treated badly by the police, right? I've had negative experiences with police officers, but never once have I been minding my own business, literally trying to avoid the police, and have I been arrested by a direct result of that. And so for me, it's just really disheartening to even, outside of having to go to jail, outside of now you have a record, right? Now you have your fingerprinted. So regardless of if you never did anything wrong, now the government has access to your DNA because you've been fingerprinted, because you've been into the system. Now they have access to you in ways that they would have never had access to you simply because you were trying to walk home. Like, to me, it's just like, we really do need to do a better job in this country in how we not only train our officers, but think about the stress that people, specifically our young boys, are feeling when they have to figure out, how do I avoid the police by any means necessary? Because it could end up in a situation where I can be dead or in jail, and I didn't do anything. I was just, like you said, walking home. And, an officer is putting his hands on you. You have nothing to do with that situation. You're just trying to, get away from the crowd. And then you're saying to him, you don't have to put your hands on me to do your job. Like, you don't have to put your hands on me to do your job. But now that results in you going to jail. And it's as frustrating as it is, I don't want to minimize your experience by saying the silver lining is I'm thankful that you had those experiences, because it equips you to do the work in your current role, right?
Yeah.
Like, had you been put in this role, or had you been elected to this role without those experiences, who knows what type of work you would have been working towards. But
you're a Black man in America who serves in a legislature that, I'm in Nebraska right now, that does not look like you, that doesn't, I'm not, I don't know everyone, but who might champion for the rights of all people and care about justice, but will have not had the same experiences you've had, like Brianna is talking about. And so it really is beautiful in the sense that you, with all of this that has happened, like being arrested, like having these encounters with the police, are, first of all, still able to serve in the legislature and not try to hide this part of your story, but wave it up, as a banner to call for reform, to call for justice. Because when I heard you testify on the floor about your story, I said, wait, what? Like, what? And he's sitting in these seats right here, and he's like, that's awesome, because it gives hope too to other people, to let them know, like, if you were frustrated with something that's happened to you that was wrong, guess what? You can go a step further than just advocating for it. You can actually create laws and pass bills so that this can never happen again.
Or we begin to move the arrow of justice in the direction that we want it to go, right? It's like, yes, I'm frustrated because I get frustrated every day, and I can't imagine being handcuffed. Oh God, ooh,
Yeah,
that would be a whole
seriously.
different side. A whole different side of me will come out. But you can
Yeah.
use that frustration to be angry, right? It's very easy to be angry in this country,
Yeah.
especially as a person of color, every day. But you took that and you repurposed it, and you allow it to be your, as I call, your secret sauce to help you move forward to where you need to be, because you're waving it high in the sky. I remember, Denisha, when you reached out to me about this interview, I saw Nebraska, and I was like, oh goodness, who are we interviewing? Like, let me go do some research, because my experience with certain parts of the country are very limited, and unfortunately positive pictures are not painted about certain parts of the country, especially as it relates to education, school choice, and police brutality. And so I was very relieved when I did a little deep dive, and I was like, oh, okay, we're going to have a really good conversation, right? Because I don't know. I'm like, okay, how do I tailor my questions so that I'm not, rude, right? Like that I'm actually understanding the story and the dynamic of where you come from. But once I read your background, I was like, oh, this is going to be a great conversation. In a great way to, like, I'm a mentor to different students just to show them that these are examples of people who've also had interactions with the police. And this is how they've decided to turn their life, not necessarily turn their life around, because you weren't doing anything. It wasn't like you were out here being a criminal and decided to be good. You were already being good. You were just being harassed. And I feel like that adds fuel to the fire. It's like, I'm not even doing anything. Like,
we had a woman on the show during the last episode, Kelly Williams Bollard, and she was a mom in Walter's home state in Ohio, who was arrested for using the wrong address, using her father's address to send her kids to a better school. And she was arrested, she was charged, and it was her father died in prison when they arrested him too. But I say that because like that spirit of hope that you just mentioned, Brianna, and that not being bitter is, you and her, Terrell, have, Senator McKinney, have that in common. That it's like the pain translated into purpose, and that, or passion, and that passion translated into purpose, and it just fueled hope instead of just down and despair. And so that's really admirable, and I think that's something that everyone who listens to our podcast, sees this video, can take away, because everything that bad happens to a person can actually be fuel to create some change in this world.
Yeah. I want to hop in if possible here. I have a question for you, Senator McKinney. How do you interact on the day-to-day with, particularly Nebraska, with the legislature? Because the first time I met you, I mean, I was excited just to see, someone else that looks like me in Nebraska at the dinner table. But how do you? I mean, my first impression of you is that you don't have time, and you refuse to tolerate the games, right, when it comes to politics. And I mean, I've listened to you on the floor, and you and I have had conversations where you're just like, I don't play, right? It's like if something's coming across the floor that is supposed to help your community and the people you represent, and that it clearly doesn't, right? You'll be the first one to stand up to be like, nah, this ain't real, right? And so I've had a couple of experiences in Nebraska where and I won't give details, I won't name names, but there was some times where, like, I was there in February, and I was shoveling out our car around the State House, and one of the people that works in the Capitol, I went to help him out, and he looks over at me, and sorry, it's my cat. he looks over at me and says, "You could probably make some money, shoveling out people's cars and stuff." And like, I'm sitting here. Hold on one second. I'm sitting here, in a nice suit, like doing this work, right, and engaging at this high level, and like for that to be the first response that you say to me, right? It's like, okay, like you may have meant well, right, or not, but it's like, you have to be aware of the things that you're saying and the people that you're interacting with. And so, do you ever deal with things like that? Whether it's like, I often refer to it as like subtle racial shade or kinds of
microaggression,
or just plain dumbness.
Yeah. Do you ever deal with that in Nebraska?
Being dumb.
Definitely do. I know like the first week or two, maybe the first month, I have my AA Michael, who's a little younger than me. He would walk around and he would get mistaken for me, but I'm bald. He got a brush cut. Like they would, it's crazy. And what else? Pronouncing your name wrong, and you tell them how to say your name, but they still proceed to say your name wrong. And I think the one thing that surprised them was when we were in committee hearings and where I wasn't afraid to ask any question, especially because I'm on the Judiciary Committee and the Education Committee. So people coming in and saying these are great things, and I'm like, no, hold on, like, no, this is gonna negatively affect my community, and that's why I'm here. Like, I'm not I don't care who you are, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever you call yourself. At the end of the day, I was sent here to represent my community and look out for them. So if I see something that's wrong, I'm calling it out or I'm asking the question, and it's up to you to answer it correctly.
I want to give you some time to talk about your bill that just passed, your hair legislation. I want to know why it's so important to you, because I don't see no, afro on on the top of your head. So
it's LB 451. It's to end hair discrimination in the workplace. And it was introduced last year by another senator, Michaela Cavanaugh, but it was vetoed by our governor. So I decided to bring it back this year, and we was able to work out some language kinks with him to get him not to oppose the bill and still keep what we wanted within the bill to keep its substance as well. And it was important to me because, one, I have a daughter who's just turned 11 and she wears her hair natural, and maybe one day if she don't move away, she'll end up in the workplace in Nebraska, and I don't want her to have to conform to corporate grooming standards or other standards because of the way her hair grows outside of her hair. And that's why it's important to me. Also, a lot of women in my community that are very supportive of this bill, and I listen to them as well. I try to listen to my constituents, and it's something that is needed, especially because Omaha, Nebraska, we're dealing with a lot of brain drain from like Black young professionals. And I think this bill is a way to retain talent and to at least get them to kind of see like, okay, you're welcome here in Nebraska, and you don't have to move away because you don't feel accepted. Because I have friends that moved away that wear their hair natural, and I've talked to them about working in corporate Omaha, and it wasn't the best experiences at all. So it's big for me as a father, but also as somebody that's elected official and somebody that it's just a simple community member, and I want everybody to feel welcome, especially women from my community. But it's also men that wear dreads as well and their hair natural. So honestly, it's for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I am happy, ecstatic about this bill. Congratulations on being able to move it to the finish line. One of my questions, thank you that you made this bill possible, because it sets the stage, right? If like at the state level, we're saying we're no longer going to penalize people for wearing their hair naturally, specifically people of color, because we can't control it. I think I would like to also see that at the K-12 level. I feel like a lot of students are being penalized for their hair. And one of the major frustrations I have with that is they don't control their own hair, right? Like they're children. The second thing is these are kids. They have the rest of their life to conform.
Seriously.
It's literally the only time of their
Yeah.
life where they can be creative.
Yep. I wish I had some blue hair when I was in elementary school.
Because
I would
it
have
makes
rocked
you
it.
different. Like you embrace different parts of yourself that you may not ever get a chance to explore. If we're conforming and penalizing and structuring our children from the time they're born, when do they have the opportunities to actually explore, grow? You know, they may not want to keep blue hair forever, but why can't my second grader have blue hair if she wants it? Like, to me, it doesn't make any sense. It's not setting the right tone. And so taking this stance at the state level, I think is critical. And it's setting a tone across the country. Like, we cannot continue to openly discriminate against people of color based off of things they literally cannot control. Like their hair.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I think that's also why, you know, everyone says, you know, representation matters, right? To the point now where it's like, you know, it's almost cliche. Well, it is cliche, but I think that's why it's so important to have people that look like us, you know, in the room making these decisions, right? Because if you have, you know, a room full of white people and one of us walks in with a different hairstyle than them, whether it's the natural color, whether it's pink, bright orange, green, it doesn't matter. To them, that's something different, right? Yes. To them, that's something that's outside of their scope, right? And so they may see that, right? You would naturally see that as an outlier, or there's something different. And that's something that we do not want here. But it's all about perspective, right? And so if you have someone like Senator McKinney, once again, right, this ain't right. No, this is not a good decision for my community, right? Then that voice is present, and that voice is there to give that perspective, but then also to, you know, shoot off some rounds when if needed, to really get the point across. And so I think you're doing excellent work, McKinney, and all the way here from Ohio, we appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and you know, in the spirit of a dab a do ya, you know, we all got a little dab, you know, just a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about education before you know, we conclude. So talk to me a little bit about, you know, your thoughts on how education in the how education reform, criminal justice reform are one and the same, what your hopes and dreams are for education. And
I think they definitely are one and the same. I saw the question tell you a little about my K through 12 experience. Through, you know, elementary, I was one of those kids that was getting suspended a lot and sent to the principal office all the time for fighting, being told that I'm acting out. I know I was telling somebody the other day in junior high school.
I know, right?
I spent majority of like my 7th and 8th grade year in school suspension, sitting in front of a cubicle doing my homework, and
wow,
because me and a teacher didn't get along. In high school, it was okay. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was the greatest. It was okay. I know my senior year, I forced myself out of a basic physics class because I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, nothing against my classmates, but I'm not this stupid. And I went to my counselor and was like, hey, could you get me out this class and just put me in an honors class? And the counselor looked at me like I was tripping. I was like, no, I'm serious. Take me out this class. So, you know, that was that, and I was still able to, you know, succeed. Now, fast forward to today, I coach wrestling at the high school I used to go to, and I see the things that aren't necessarily improved. There's too many kids that can fall through the cracks right now in our system. I was having a conversation with the superintendent yesterday of Omaha Public Schools, and I was telling her we have to find a way to catch the kids that are falling through the cracks. Because over the weekend we had, you know, a string of like violence going on in the community, and a lot of those kids are the kids that are just falling through the cracks, and nobody's stepping in to grab them. And that's been the same since I was in high school. And I was like, we have to create some type of system that say, okay, this kid is acting out, or this kid got all these felon grades. Let's bring them in and figure out what's going on at home. why aren't you doing your homework? How can we help you? And build some holistic support around these kids. Because then if we don't support them in high school or in elementary, and then they end up in the streets and then they commit a crime, how are we outraged when we did nothing to support them? I'm not advocating for what they did, but we cannot try to help them and then be mad at them later as well.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing to mention, because if you do not catch those kids who are falling through the grate, then the system catches those kids and they end up, whether directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally, in the system. And that can look differently for different people, right? Whether we're talking about being in prison or we're talking about generational welfare, right? Because you haven't been equipped with the skills to go out there and do the work for yourself. You don't have the capacity to do it. So I do have one more question. I have to hop off at 2 exactly, but before I leave, I wanted to really just give you opportunity to, you briefly spoke about the certain areas as it relates to education and creating systems that you feel like there's gaps for improvement within Nebraska. But could you talk to me more specifically about this idea of youth jail? Like, I'm not familiar with the concept. So is this just like a juvenile prison? Is it different from a regular juvenile? Like, what type of services are we offering within the juvenile system? Are there academics a part of it? Is it just fend for yourself once you get here?
So currently we have, it's called DCYC, it's the Douglas County Youth Center. And it's been around probably before I was born. It's kind of old and it looks really like a prison. So they've come up with this idea to create this new juvenile justice center in downtown Omaha. And the only reason behind this whole idea is because they needed more space for juvenile judges. And they were going to build a building. And a part of the proposal, it was a suggestion that, hey, you might want to build a new juvenile justice center. And the county commissioners and the city went with it, created a whole nonprofit behind it. And it's just crazy now. And their thinking is, if we create this, we decrease the amount of beds and we're gonna hope that the system fixes itself. But during the whole process, they were never talking about what were gonna be the programs inside this facility to assist these kids and make sure that if they do end up here, they come out better than they came. And I still don't know what services will be provided. I know there's a community health center, Charles Drew Health, who's doing some behavior health with the youth in the current youth center, and I think they will in this new version as well. But that's my biggest thing, and that's what annoys me, is that why are we waiting to provide these type of services when they get arrested? Why can't we devote the money
Preventative
before they get arrested to assist them? Like, why can't we help the family prior? Why do we have to wait for them to end up in the system and get arrested? And some of them, are being charged as adults, so
they're never making it to that juvenile system to begin with.
And it irks me, like what you say. It's like the monies that, and you didn't say this. I was like, wait for you to say it, but because on your website, People for McKinney, right? People for Terrell McKinney. You highlight that Nebraska has the highest incarceration rate in the entire nation, and they are like the highest money wise too, or something.
So we currently have an overcrowding crisis, and our governor has proposed to build a whole new prison, and we've been fighting that all session, and it's sad. Like, that's what they want to do here, is build prisons and not address the issues. But it's
pick your school or pick your prison.
Yeah, like they think that's gonna solve it. And even in the meetings with the governor, I've told him, I was like, look, if you really want to solve this problem, it's not the prison, it's to invest the money in the people and into communities like North Omaha. The state and the city has never put adequate resources into this community, and it has essentially created this problem in a lot of ways. And your your solution to get around it is to build another prison, which is going to house majority of the people that come from my district, and I have a problem with that.
Exactly. And I wonder, like, okay, what are the reading outcomes for the students in North Omaha? Like, are they graduating from high school? And if they're not graduating from high school, like, that tells me, like, okay, we need to just diversify the types of school options that are in that community, because what you got there is not working.
Yeah, the kids are not interested, right? It's almost like we blame students. Like, I mean, we could get into like why we need to rethink education in this country in general and how we do it,
Yeah.
and how it's applied and who it works for, because I would say all four of us here are what some would consider high functioning, highly successful adults. But yet the common thread between all four of us is that we had issues in school. Like, I was always in trouble, right? Like, I literally was always in trouble, and it would be for things I didn't even do anything, but just being like, I would get in trouble for, you're distracting the class because you're talking. And I'm like, but I'm asking you a question, right? Like, it's not that I'm talking or I'm being combative or I'm like having a conversation with my girl. I'm asking you a question, and you don't like the way I'm asking you this question, or you don't like the way I said it, or I'm challenging your ideas as a teacher, and I'm not just listening to what you tell me in this book because I may have read a different book. And so, because
we should have all been in detention together.
I was literally always in detention, and it was like really, like, it got to the point where my mother would just say, like, I know you, like, whatever, because they would tell my mom, oh, she's trying to take over my class. I'm asking you a question.
Right.
Like, that's not trying to take over your class. But we haven't equipped our teachers, right? They don't even know what they should be doing and what works for our students, because they're being taught old ways, and it's not working. So if your target audience, if you can't connect to your audience, then you have to redo what you're doing. You can't get mad at the student for not receiving what you're teaching them without at least trying to rethink how we do it. And so, expecting kids to sit still in class for 8 hours out the day, be talked to all day without ever being able to voice their opinions. And I can't wear my hair the way I want to wear my hair. And I have to wear uniform. And I have to have my sneakers a certain color and certain shoestrings. It's like we're literally raising people and indoctrinating people to follow rules, follow instructions. And anybody who don't do that, now they're a problem, and we're creating space for them.
And I would say for Black students, it's like, and be in a system that was not designed to affirm who I am, to benefit me at all. And it's like, so it, like, we in Jacksonville, where I'm from, Jacksonville, Florida, we're going through the whole process of trying to rename some high schools and rename schools who were named after leaders, like in the Union, in the Confederacy, and we've had many meetings, and there have been some really racist things that have been said in these meetings by community leaders. One guy went as far to say that the Andrew is a school, Lee High School, Robert E. Lee. He was a general in the Confederate Army. And he's got up and said, well, slaves are supposed to obey their masters, and, we're supposed to keep them subdued. So really the school is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Like,
and use the Bible verse. And use the Bible verse.
Yes.
And we have, you're right. Like, and at the end of the day, you're right. We named a school. It's in a predominantly Black neighborhood after a Confederate leader, and we expect for our kids to go to this school and succeed. That don't make sense. Like, it's an oxymoron. The kids are not going to go somewhere where it's inherently racist and they are expected to succeed in this system. No matter what type of Title I program you put in, you got millions of dollars and all these aid funds. How are the kids going to succeed?
Yeah.
That's my little.
And then I will add to that before I hop off is that we don't give kids enough credit. We like to think that we are the adults and we know everything. Let me tell you something. A student knows, a child knows, even if they can't articulate it, if they can't express it, even if they don't even know why they're acting out. Their spirit knows, their energy knows, and we cannot continue to treat our students and treat them in a way that we encourage them to be submissive, but then expect them to be thought leaders. It's like, How do you
Yeah.
expect to raise leaders if we're from K to 12 telling them, do what I tell you to do, dress the way I tell you to dress, do your homework the way I tell you to do your homework. It must be completed the way your name needs to be on the left side. It needs to be on the right. Like, we're literally giving them step by step by step by step instructions onto how we want them to live their lives for us. And then somehow they turn 18, they go to college, and we expect them to be fully functioning, high thinking, high morale citizens. Like, how? It doesn't make any sense. And so I definitely think that we need to rethink the way we do education in this country. And hopefully, if we rethink that, then it will affect how we do prison in this country. And I mean, I see the direct connection. I hope that we continue to be able to do this type of work. And I hope that you continue to be able to do this type of work, Senator McKinney, and anything that I can do for you out here in DC. You know, we are good on social media. We can galvanize some people on social media. If you ever need people to back you up,
You need somebody canceled.
you need somebody canceled, we can get Black Twitter to get them canceled. So if you need some power, we got you.
And last question for you, Senator McKinney, what's your hope for education reform in your community in Nebraska?
My hope. I hope that, our kids don't have to go to school and, have to sit in class and have to think about what they didn't eat last night. They don't have to go to school and hope the teacher isn't in a bad mood and doesn't understand where they're coming from. I hope that, our kids are provided the same education no matter where they live, and that they're given equitable opportunity to succeed and not be told, no, you shouldn't do this because you may not be successful. I hope that, our kids are challenged and, pushed to higher things other than what we're pushing them on. I just also hope that, we get back to, a point where we're the innovators, like, because when you look back on history and think about true Black history and making sure that our kids really know that, especially needs to be in our schools. But when we get back to being the inventors and the innovators, we are already, but our kids, because of the situation a lot of us come up in, we don't really realize it until we become adults or get to college and say, I'm great and I could do this and that. Why couldn't I be thinking about owning my own business when I was in elementary instead of being trained to be a worker or things like that? So I don't know. I just, overall, I just hope that, eventually the education system is more equitable and our kids are given a fair shake at whatever the supposed American dream is, if that even exists for us. But making sure that they get a real opportunity at being successful in life and not being judged when they walk inside that building when they're supposed to be educated.